Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Super-Fanta-Fi. This being a show where I talk about TV shows of the supernatural, fantasy, and/or science fictional genre. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of Once Upon a Time. So, a very good episode where we got shortly introduced to the Count of Monte Cristo, which I'm familiar with the title of the tale, but the tale itself, I'm not that familiar. I don't think I knew anything about it prior to this episode, which, fortunately for me in this show, they kind of give you a little bit of a rundown what a story is. I mean, granted, no, it's not like you necessarily need to know what the original tale is. I mean, some cases you can't help but automatically know the original tale because it's kind of like, some of the stuff is very classical tales, so it's like, oh yeah, you kind of can't help it because you grew up knowing them. But in the case of Monte Cristo, it's like they kind of tell you ahead of time. It's like, yeah, it's about revenge, which is like Edmund kind of got shafted. It sucks. I mean, his home was burned down. His family's fortune was stolen from him, and it was squandered. His exact words. And his fiance was killed, and just purely wants revenge. Which I kind of had a feeling that's kind of what his story was going to be about. I vaguely know that notion about it being a story about revenge. Maybe I'm misconstruing that with a different story that I have in mind. I think there's a different story I had in my mind that I was kind of thinking. So I don't. Nevertheless, and that need for revenge is actually what kind of brought him and Regina together. Very interestingly enough, I wasn't kind of expecting that. But at first, I was thinking like the person that was going to pop up. I was like, oh yeah, it's obviously going to be Rumpelstiltskin. Oh, it's Regina, and I was like, it makes sense. Well, for a storytelling purpose as well as just because. And at that time, she would full-on revenge, wanting Snow dead. I mean, eventually Charming too, but mainly Snow in the beginning. Because it's like, showing the parallels, because it's like, at the same time she's you get to look at the past of that. At the same time she's helping Edmund get his revenge, by helping her get her revenge against Snow. We see the present time where she's trying her best to that was always a thing. It's like every time you see Regina kind of moving forward, you always kind of get the flip side of seeing her kind of in the past, always kind of taking steps back. Obviously, because it's like, Snow and different people always try to present her opportunities to move forward, but she was so filled with hate and revenge that she just couldn't. I mean, especially because she gave that big speech at the beginning of the episode. She's being like, I know what it's like to be scared of the future. Some of you have stories that you're scared of the outcome, so that's why you went to the land of untold stories, but you don't have to worry about it. I'm kind of in a similar situation. I'm starting a new story too, and I don't know what's going to happen in the future. You don't know, and that's not knowing is very scary. But we can come together, and figure it out together. And it was kind of, that's very sweet. So like I said, but at the same time, it's like, it makes sense that they would do that. But it's also like, because it is kind of interesting that the Count would happen to just pop up just when Regina's doing all that. And then it turns out it's like, oh yeah, because the Count is actually being controlled by the evil queen. Which I'm actually very surprised that they met up so soon. I mean, kind of already knew it was going to happen, but nonetheless, I'm just surprised that it happened, already in the second episode of the season. And it was a very interesting meetup, because, because for Regina, that has to shatter her confidence, because she was like, I thought I got rid of you, you were dead, but you're here, and it kind of terrifies her a little bit, especially when the whole thing plays out and she ends up killing Edmund, because she didn't really have much of a choice. It was the only way to end that. Surprisingly enough, I really like the fact is that we got to see that Regina can fence in this episode. The moment she was fencing a little bit, she was kind of doing it very effortlessly against one of her guards in the past. I was like, has she ever fought with a sword in the past? I was like, no, she's always relied on her magic. Obviously, we've seen Snow and Prince Charming, do that from time to time, take up swords. But I was like, I've never seen her. I was trying to remember. I was like, has that come up before? And I was like, no, she's always relied on her magic. And then it came up later on, and I had a feeling it would. And I was just like, well, when she went up against Edmund, I was like, right, okay, that's what they were setting that up right there. So I was like, but still, that's very interesting to see her fight, show that she does have skills outside of her magic. It's just magic is a lot more powerful and more convenient for her, so, but it doesn't mean she can't handle her own when the time comes. So that was pretty cool seeing that side of her. But the fact is that she sadly had to kill Edmund. It was the only way that was going to end, and that it was all a trap laid out by the evil queen, because she wanted Regina to be put in that situation where she had no choice, because to break her confidence, because Regina had already taken these steps forward. She was feeling good about herself, becoming the hero she wanted to be. But now the evil queen is making her realize, like, oh, you were a villain all along. Heroes always find a different way, but you couldn't. So it just shows you that you are, and you are, and you always will be a villain, because there will always be darkness in your heart. There's no escaping it. You might have thought you got rid of it when you pulled me out, but there will always be darkness in your heart, because there will always be that part of you that is the evil queen. And sadly, it does seem like that is true, because it's kind of a situation of, you can't have light without darkness. You can't have darkness without light. And that's who Regina is. Like, but because the sad thing is, Regina tried to get rid of her past, and it's understandable why she tried to get rid of the darkness in her heart, but it is a part of who she is. It's not the prettiest and best part, but that struggle is something that she has to bear. Because at the same time, it's almost like, because some people could view it as like, oh, you're trying to alleviate your own pain by getting rid of the darkness so you don't have to deal with that struggle. That struggle is your way of dealing with what you did in the past. It's a good thing that you're conflicted. I mean, because she has to fight back. I mean, it's not necessarily a good thing, because it's like, it's sad that you have to fight something that almost comes instinctual to you, like to be evil, that she has to like tell herself, like, no, that's not the right thing to do. Be good, be a hero, not a villain. But just to have all that work undone, because what I think, at first I thought that would have been very interesting if they had done that. Like, when the evil queen showed up again, she tried to use her magic and it didn't work. But she's like, oh, I put a dampening spell on Charlotte, so the moment you touched her, your magic started dying. I was thinking, like, oh, at first I was like, a thought quickly crossed my mind. I was like, oh, is her confidence kind of shaking just like Emma's is? So her magic is kind of a little bit on the fritz. Because she has, like, subsequently, since she got rid of the evil queen, like, we've seen it so far in this season that she was like, last episode, she was a little afraid. She's like, I don't know if I'm going to be powerful enough to stop him. When Emma's like, let's join our powers together to get Hyde. But she's like, I don't know if it's going to work. I'm not sure if I'm strong without the queen. Like, but this episode was kind of showing that, like, no, I can be strong without the queen. The queen didn't make me strong. That evil in my heart made me strong. I'm strong all on my own. So, but the evil queen points out that her plan is, I'm not going to destroy. Obviously, my plans haven't changed. My plans have always been to destroy everyone else's happily ever after. But Regina has always, as time is going on, has become less about destroying other people's happily ever afters, to basically saying, like, I'm just going to not worry about destroying other people's happiness and just find my own happiness, especially now. But it's like, the evil queen's kind of going back to that. But rather than doing it herself, she's going to feed the darkness inside of Regina and force her to be the one to destroy everyone's happily ever after. And I love what she said. The fact is that everyone has stories that they don't. It's not just the people from the land of untold stories that have stories they don't want to be told. There's even characters we know that don't want their stories to be told. For example, David. It's not necessarily that there's not just people themselves, but stories specifically that don't want to be told. For example, she's throwing out the possibility that David's father dying might not have been an accident. That basically throwing out the possibility that maybe he didn't kind of fall off the wagon, get drunk and killed. Maybe, that it was an accident and it killed him. Maybe someone purposely killed him and made it look like that. That'd be kind of interesting. I feel like, because it kind of brought up this episode, it's like, so you want me to tell you every time I've ever tried to kill you? And then David and Snow were kind of like, yeah, it would help if you kind of let us know about that, so we can see these type of situations coming ahead of time. It's kind of interesting that it took Regina a very, very long time to learn the lesson that it seems like it didn't take Edmund that long to learn. Because at first he was willing to help her get her revenge because it meant she was going to help him get his revenge. But then eventually he was kind of, at first he was okay with doing it, but then he got to know Snow and Charming. It's like, they've been nothing but nice and kind. Why do you hate them so much? Which Regina never really went into why she hates them so much. She just kind of dangled the fact is, like, it doesn't matter why I want my revenge. Let's just remember the fact is that helping me get my revenge will help you get yours, and that's all that matters. But he ended up falling back on it because he kind of learned a lesson of like other people get caught up in your revenge, and that's something Regina never learned. I mean, obviously she learned, but it took a very long time because it's like she doesn't care who she has to hurt, no matter who, if someone's innocent or not. If it meant destroying Snow, there's as many innocent sacrifices as need be. It does make you wonder what Edmund would have thought if he did know her backstory of like why she hates Snow so much, that it all started like with a secret being told that it led to her, the person she loved dying. So, I mean, mainly it was a combination of Snow and Charming, plus the fact is of Charlotte, the handmaid, who she reminded him of his fiance. So particularly in her eyes, I guess there was just kind of a way about her eyes that reminded him of his fiance, that kind of made him decide not to go through with it. I mean, you even had Charlotte kind of showing up later being dead, and I was just like, oh man, that sucks. It's kind of like a little bit kind of like the Robin / Marion situation of just finding out. It's like, yeah, she never actually got out the Enchanted Forest ever. It was just Elena pretending to be her. So like, even when Emma and them went back in time, like she still ended up dying, which she was already dead to begin with. So it's kind of like, but you know, in this situation, it's kind of like, oh, you think she kind of went off and led a very happy life. I wonder will we ever kind of get that. It makes you wonder, was there ever something between her and Edmund? Was he able to move on in the land of untold stories? But sadly, coming back now, she dies. So I was like, I mean, it's, you know, the Evil Queen was basically finishing off something that was supposed to be finished off a long time ago. I guess it was just kind of icing on the cake. It's like, Edmund's done. You know, it was just all to make Regina kill him, but it was also, you know, finishing up something that should have been dealt with a long time ago. I guess she ended up finding out the truth that like, oh, that's the reason why he didn't kill Snow and Charming. I mean, granted, it was all Rumpelstiltskin's fault for putting him in this situation, which I'll get to him in a second. But I love how all of that kind of, you know, ties in with Emma. I mean, because for one, like I said, they're both at a point where they're kind of shaken because both of them almost having like a confidence issue at the same time having a identity crisis, because it's like Regina's dealing with the fact it's like, I should have just left the Evil Queen where she was, but now what was always my inner struggle is now a problem everyone has to deal with, which is going to be very interesting. Obviously, we get at the end of the episode that word's kind of gotten out about the Evil Queen coming back, but you know that's going to be very interesting because every time that happens, it's like the Evil Queen. You know, every time something like that centering around her happens in Storybrooke, especially you have the dwarves at the center of it being like, yo, the Evil Queen is here. What are we going to do about it? You guys are kind of the heads of the town. Especially, you know, it's going to be like, yo, okay, Regina, what are you going to do about the Evil Queen? She is part of you. This is kind of your fault. This is your problem. You kind of get the feeling that's going to happen. It's because the dwarves are always the first ones to kind of rile stuff up. That's just what they always do. But the thing is, like, you have Emma kind of talking to Archie, Jiminy, in this episode, finally coming clean about the visions and everything, and about the reason why she hasn't told her family. It's because it's kind of it's a returning theme that's come up before of like, hey, I'm the savior. The savior needing to be saved. It's kind of a very demeaning thing. It's like, I'm supposed to make sure everyone gets their happiness. I'm supposed to protect everyone. I shouldn't be the one being protected, because she knows that if she tells her family, they're going to go through hell and back to be there for her, like, you know, protect her. It's like, okay, you don't do anything, we'll find a way to kind of save you type of situation. So, because if she isn't the savior, she doesn't know what to do with herself, because it's like, that's all she has, that's all she is. Without it, she doesn't know who she is. You know, like I said, identity crisis. And at the same time, you know, Regina has to figure out like what she's going to do, because even though she went through all the trouble getting rid of the darkness in her heart, it's still a flicker of it left. Which at the same time, it's kind of like, in that situation, like, fighting the darkness in her is a big part of who she is. Like, it's sad, but that is her part of her story, because sadly she tried to just completely eradicate the darkness in her heart, which someone could view that as like her just trying to make herself feel better about all the things. Like, I'm not saying she doesn't feel bad for the things she does, but that struggle is a big part of her making up for the past. It's like struggling to keep the evil queen at bay because, you know, for her, with the darkness inside of her, instinctually, she naturally wants to be evil, and it takes like the good side of her to kind of pull that back and be like, no, no, you can't do that. That's not a good thing. I mean, because there is light within her now, like there was always that flicker of light in her before that, especially like Snow and others try to get out of Regina. But, you know, eventually that flicker of light grew into a big light of its own to counteract the big amount of darkness in her. Because, you know, it's one of those situations of like, you can't have light without darkness, you can't have darkness without light. Regina's whole thing was to have that balance, but it was just too much for her. Like I said, she just couldn't handle the fact that said, like, okay, like, always having to, like, fight what comes natural to me. You know, sadly, evil comes natural. So it's like having to fight that is just too much. And, you know, because even as much as she pushes herself to be a hero, like, you know, that she finding out now that she is a villain to her core and she can't completely get rid of that. Which, you know, to me, I kind of brought it up last week's episode that I feel like everything's going to head towards her finding that balance, that she is going to have to rejoin with the evil queen, that's the only way she's going to deal with this, because you can't, you know, that amount of evil and hate manifested over years, so it's not going to go away that easily. So she's going to have to combine with herself, and her story is going to be her struggling to keep that darkness under control. I mean, I don't know, maybe at the end of the day, when it's all said and done this season, maybe she'll be able to completely destroy the evil queen once and for all. I don't know. But that in itself, I knew it, especially the way the episode's going on. I was like, that's going to be how this is going to play out. Emma is going to kind of be reluctant to be around Regina because she's now pushing towards, because she gets the same thought that I brought up last episode. Who happened to not be there during her duel? It ended up being Regina wasn't there. And so now she's reluctant because she doesn't know who could be the person that kills her. It could either be the evil queen, or it could be Regina turning back evil because of what the evil queen is doing. So now she's going to be a little reluctant to trust Regina. It's going to be kind of it's kind of that thing of like, because everything that's going on, she's going to start second guessing Regina, even though she's made so much progress. You know, her fear of the future, like I said, the Oracle told her last episode, having knowledge of the future just is a very essentially damning thing, because it will kind of rack your mind. It's like always knowing the future, you're always scared around every corner, because you also had Hyde bringing it up last episode. You never know what events are going to lead to the rise of the villain that's going to put you down. Maybe it's someone that hasn't gotten here yet. Talking it's someone that already is here. And it's like now they're painting a picture of it being Regina, which I kind of threw that out as a possibility last episode. Obviously, since I'm talking about that, I don't know why I'm backpedaling like that. But the point is, I don't think it is her. I mean, it could easily be her, but I'm thinking, nah, the point is to set it up and kind of draw tension between her and Emma and Regina, just to kind of cause that tension and kind of keep her very away from her. Like, rather than coming together trying to solve this whole situation, they're going to be kind of pulled apart. Maybe Emma will try to help her deal with the evil queen situation, because it's like, if I get rid of the evil queen, I don't even have to worry about Regina ever becoming evil. But maybe there'll be a part of her that's like, but maybe me getting rid of the evil queen ends up putting her in a position where she ends up reverting back to her evil. Regina ends up reverting back to her evil self and ends up being the one to do that to me. I have no idea who the person in the hood is going to be. It's going to be very interesting, like, to kind of see that mystery resolved, to finding out like who the person is. I can't even fathom to guess who it is. I mean, maybe that's another reason why they did show us that Regina can like handle herself with a sword. Specifically, it was a fencing sword, and this was a different sword. But nonetheless, you know, I'm sure a lot of the fundamentals are somewhat similar, so it's not that much of a leap to be like, oh, she could pick up a sword and fight Emma. So I think that'd be kind of interesting. Not unless it's a type of situation where we have, I mean, currently a random thought thrown out there. Maybe it's Merlin come back and it's like, hey, like he's evil now or something, and you have to face off against one of the most powerful magical beings that's kind of ever existed. Because I'm pretty sure maybe it'd be a situation where while Emma's fighting, at the same time, maybe we have Regina going up against the evil queen and possibly resolving that situation. That may be why Regina wasn't there. Now, earlier I brought up the fact is that of Gold, Rumple, that basically that whole conversation with Regina, which kind of was a little flirtatious, which is kind of interesting. Like, you've always seen that as being a possibility with them. It's just like they always had that obviously master-student relationship, and then it's kind of like a little flirtatious the way they kind of get close to each other, like the way he touched her sometimes. And then she's kind of like, you're spending all this time worried about Belle, the woman that wants to change you, can't accept you as who you are. You should kind of be with me. I will accept you for who you are. He's like, what makes you think that's going to happen? Eventually, you're going to get tired of that whole situation, and you're going to come, want to be with me afterward. I was like, that's very interesting. I wasn't expecting that. At the moment she's like pressing up against him and like having his hand touch, I was like, wow, that's never crossed. Like, I can't say it never crossed my mind. It crossed my mind in the past. I'm surprised that never happened though in the past. That boundary between master and student never got completely crossed. But now they're kind of pushing that angle. And it will be interesting to see what Rumple will do, because him and Zelena are kind of in a similar state of just kind of like not being accepted by the people that they care about. I mean, because Zelena went through the whole aspect of not telling anyone about the Evil Queen's return, that she took something from Regina's magical supplies. Like, she had multiple opportunities to do it, but she went along with her and didn't say anything because, like I said last time, like, the Evil Queen is the version of Regina that she has the most in common with. That's which in itself is a fascinating dynamic of just like what we bond over is the fact is that we both hold heavy darkness in our hearts, that we are essentially evil magic users, and that's kind of something that they bond over. It's like they don't have anyone else to kind of rely on in that situation, like anyone else like themselves. So that's why Zelena took it so hard finding out what Regina did, But there was kind of a sliver of you being like, oh, maybe she isn't 100% for it, because there was a part of her that's like, so like, just tell me you're not going to hurt my sister. So there's a part of her that is caring, like, I hope you're not trying to kill Regina or something. She's like, no, I'm just going to teach her a lesson. But by the end of the episode, it seems like she's kind of okay with something might happening to Regina, because she's like, I'll be the sister that you always wanted, the sister that you deserve, the one who will always accept you for who you are, won't badmouth you, like, or not trust you anymore. Yes, this whole thing was a test, but unlike Regina, I will always trust you now. Because Regina will always have, like, anytime something goes wrong, she will immediately go to Zelena. I mean, case in point, the whole magic thing. It's like, oh, the barrier's up. It's exactly like for my magic stash. The only person that could have gotten in there was Zelena because I tied it with blood magic, so. And I did kind of like the fact that Zelena was almost offended. Like, oh, how dare you think it was me? It could have easily been someone else. Had an opportunity there to be like, okay, so the Evil Queen's back. And maybe it could have prepped Regina to be more like, okay, get the whole situation under control and actually handle it properly. But by her not telling her that the Evil Queen was back, it put that whole situation for Edmund to be killed, And, maybe, I don't know, it makes you wonder, does Zelena know, like, the ramifications of not saying anything? Or does she just simply not care? Because that's also another thing, too. When you take both cases, it's like, which will she get? Will she take the Evil Queen as her sister? Or will she take Regina, who's turned evil again, back as her sister? It's just, I'm very curious to see how that goes. I want to know, will Zelena actually kind of struggle with it? Because it's like, Regina holds a grudge against her because of what happened to Robin. But it seems like the Evil Queen doesn't care. That's another thing, like, we haven't seen the Evil Queen bring up Robin. Like, you would think out of anyone, like, the Evil Queen would be spiteful. It's like, you kill the person I love. That's why I hate Snow so much. So, and maybe that would be something else. I don't know. That's a possibility too. Maybe she'll eventually turn on Zelena because, like, you actually thought I'd accept you as my sister. You killed the person I loved, as Robin. But maybe to the Evil Queen, the only person she ever loved was Daniel, and like the person that loved Robin was Regina, because Robin came into Regina's life when she would like when she was trying to be a good person, be a hero instead of a villain. So the person who fell in love with Robin wasn't the evil queen; it was Regina. Or maybe I keep doing that. Or maybe that side of Regina that loves is all inside of her, like, because they put all the darkness has been pulled out of her. So what's always held back the darkness is the light within Regina, like her good heart and her conscience being like, no, that's a bad thing. Do good, be a good person. Now you have the pure, just hate-filled Regina willing to kill anyone and do anything that she feels the need to. Because basically the evil queen is kind of acting on pure instinct of like what Regina always desired, and that was destroying everyone else's happily ever after. So that's all she cares about. Like the love that drove her to commit all this is still inside of Regina, and all the hate that fueled her to do it is all inside of Regina, the evil queen. You see what I mean? Like they're just the polar opposite. There's all that darkness in the evil queen, so she doesn't have the light to kind of balance it out, to kind of keep her in check. So that's why I even more so believe that at the end of this, they're going to have to come back together to resolve these situations. We'll just have to wait to see. Very fantastic episode. I cannot wait to see more. But till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.